Welcome back. We're doing a new video regarding an NCT failure, or an annual test inspection failure. We weren't really expecting it. It turns out that the inspectors didn't like the state of the track rod end dust covers, so they've failed it on that. But if I can show you the NCT report itself, and you can see that they've actually looked also not just for new dust covers, but they also want to see a slip and slide test. Now, before that excites you or worries you, the reason they want to do that is because when we change the track rod ends, it could change the geometry of the steering system and therefore cause a slip and slide. So the object of today's video is to show you how to do it without changing the geometry. So we're going to take the wheels off the car and start working on a track rod end. Okay, we've stripped the wheel off, and in here we have the track rod end that we'll be replacing. As you can see, it's starting to ooze a little bit of grease out of there, so yes, he's probably right. It is perished, and it is going to go and cause a problem in the near future. What we're going to do, we're going to have to undo this bolt, remove the ball joint, and we're also going to have to undo the nut, the lock nut, which keeps it all in place. The real trick would be to make sure that the distance between here and the rack remains the same. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working a little bit off screen to loosen all this off and make sure it's nice and easy to undo. And I'll come back to you when we're ready to go. Okay, we have managed to loosen this off at this stage. We put a little bit of free oil on the threads that we're going to expand it over, and then we're going to use a bit of copper grease to make sure this nut is good and free on that rung. The next thing we want to do, we want to make sure that the tie rod itself and this do not change. We want to keep this geometry, so we're going to hold that there. I'm going to run that backwards over the threads. Make sure we get a good free run should we need to do adjustment later on. And then we'll be putting on a bit of copper grease to make sure it's plenty, that it doesn't become as seized as it was when we had to tackle it. Because tracking is something that will be done from time to time in the car, and the easier it is, the better. Leave me at this now for a little while and just make sure this is good and free before we start the actual job itself. Okay, having removed the nut from the top, you can, in our case, we're throwing this particular piece away. If you're watching this video for a different reason, I would leave the nut on board so you don't damage the threads that are beneath it. But in our case, we're not really that worried about the threads, so we could just take it off. Now, at this stage, you'll notice that it's still locked solid to the hub. Now, there's a couple of ways of removing. There is tools to do it. I have one inside. But actually, one of my favourite ways is actually just to give that a good hit with a decent hammer. And the decent hammer being a good solid weight. So I'm going to try it here now and see if we can get it off. I'll just show you roughly what we're trying to do. But there we are. And it has released. So at this stage, we can undo the last of the nut and allow this track rod end out. That's the offending item there. And at this point, because we have a datum point there, we can just off screw it, like so, making sure that the nut behind does not move. We don't want that to move. Right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to compare this to the new track rod end and make sure that the central point of this here is the same distance or equidistant to the end of that. If it is, we can put it straight back on to the datum point. If it's longer, we need to move that back by that amount, which I'll show you later on. Or if it's shorter, obviously we're going to have to bring it forward. But for the moment, we're going to start measuring up. Right, here we have the two new ones, the new one and the old one. So let's try and measure up and see what we get to between the center of that ball joint and the very end of that there. And then compare with the very center of this one and the end of that one there, which looks pretty much the same to me. So it means we're actually in luck on this particular occasion. Just do a double check, measure twice, cut once. That looks identical to that there. Perfect. So it's just a straight replacement. Obviously we're going to use the new nut that comes with this, so all the existing part goes in the bin. We're just going to screw that back up to the datum point and tighten up. Okay, we just put a little bit of copper grease on the threads to make sure I have a nice easy run in with it. I'm making sure that this does not move on me. So I'm just screw it home. No, that's about as close as we're going to get to it there. So that's the, as far as I'm concerned, the nearest we're going to get to that. We now undo the new nut from the top of the actual track rod end, insert it into the position. And we're ready to tighten it up, and we are done. That will be a track rod replacement very quickly, and we haven't changed the geometry of the steering because we've kept the same distances here. I'm going to do the same to the far side, and that would mean that that's one job done, complete.